One of the first steps into building a RAG pipeline is chunking a document. And the approach of chunking is taking a large document and splitting it into bite-sized piece of information, right? And that way we can feed our large language model X amount of chunks rather than a full document. How you can achieve this in n8n is through text splitters, whether you want to split specifically by characters or by tokens. There's a lot of different options on this side of things. So like if you want to have overlapping pieces of information, or if you want to have this split by a specific character or recursiveness. So we're going to cover all of that in this video. There's 4 different options. I'll be going through each of those examples and showing you like, how are we going to split this text? How is it going to appear in our vector database, which in this case, I'll be using Pinecone. And by the end of this video, you'll be really familiar with all the different types of text splitters and chunking within n8n. Really quick, before we do jump into this video, I am taking on freelance customers. So if you do need any help with your n8n workflows, feel free to hit me up down below in the description. All right, let's jump into this tutorial. All right, guys. So before we jump into our examples, which by the way, we're going to go over, I think, 4 examples today. We'll see all these all over here. We need to do a little bit of the background behind it. So, why do we use this? Where is this at? So first, this is in the RAG pipeline stage. And your pipeline is essentially how you get your documents into your vector database, all right? You have 2 different options for your RAG text splitters. You can set it up inside the default data loader or use a custom text splitter. So just to show you, right, this is the default data loader. It looks like this, and I'll show you where this is in this vector store. Or you can see we have this over here. It changes, and you kind of get a larger oval instead of a circle. And then you get this character text splitter, or you can go over here and choose a token splitter, or you can use a recursive character text splitter. We'll cover all of those, right? But those are your 2 options as of right now, right? And if things change, they do. But I'm recording this in October of 2025. Okay, now you're going to see different options across the board. So the first one is going to be your separator. So this is how you select a separator to split the document into separate items. You can think of like, hey, maybe this is a period, right? Or this is a line like this, right? Or it's a dash like this, right? You can choose a specific separator as you want. Next, you're going to have the chunk size. So this is either the number of characters or tokens in each chunk. So typically when you see models, right, online, it'll talk about, the token size, right? But also you have the option to do this in characters. So one of these 2, and we'll go over those. And then lastly is the chunk overlap. So how much of the overlap between each chunks, right? So you'll get a little bit of the chunk prior, and then we'll jump into this over here. So you can see, like, for example, this one has no overlap, right? So pretend we have these very, very small chunks, right? So we have over here, artificial intelligence is transforming industries. Machine learning is a subset of AI. Deep learning uses neural networks, right? Obviously, this isn't balanced, right? But I just threw this example over here. If we have overlap of 2 words, you can see artificial intelligence is transforming industries, right? And then our last 2 words over here, transforming industries, are over here. So you can see transforming industries, machine learning is, right? Learning is and you have to see subset of AI, deep learning, right? So you can see we have overlap on this side of things, right? Words are repeating on this side of it, right? In this example, the last 2 words are going to be repeating, and we're going through on that side of things, okay? Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. You should have the background knowledge now. And what we're going to do for our example today is talk about baseball cards. So I collect cards, and ideally what I wanted to do for this is just grab the back of a few different Christy Mathewson cards. So you can see like there's text over here. I've already extracted all that for this video. Feel free to test whatever text you want, right? But I really just wanted to get a blob of text. So I grabbed like 5 different cards of his, and just put all this text together. And so this is what we're going to be splitting today through the RAG text splitters. In addition, right, there's a bunch of different vector databases that you could use. For easeability, I just used Pinecone in this video. I'm going to cover some of the other ones in other videos, specifically for RAG. We'll do some comparisons and things like that across the board as I build out this RAG playlist. But let me just show you really quick how you could set up Pinecone. So the first thing what you're going to do is you want to get an API key. So I just created an API key over here on this side of things. And then what you want to do is set up your account. And all you got to do is literally drag in your API key, right? I'm not going to show you my keys, but just create an API key, copy the value, paste it here in n8n, and you're going to be good to go, right? We're going to talk about covering a Pinecone index here in a second, and just covering that as well. So first thing first, right? Let's do a simple, splitter. So what this involves is each chunk by default is going to be 1,000 characters. And then because I can't spell, we have a 200 character overlap, right? And again, our overlap, I showed you over here, like this is just 2 words, right? So 200 characters will overlap in each chunk. All right, so we're going to just use this text over here, and we're going to go through that. So all I did is I set this text over here to a string in edit fields, right? Very, very basic on there. Then I converted this into a file over here, specifically a text file, just to make things really basic, right? And then what we're going to do is have our Pinecone vector source. So just to show you, right, you should be familiar with edit fields. So just click over here, edit, you'll see edit fields. Next, the convert to file node. So convert to file on here. And again, all I did is just drag in. Let me just show you this, right? So we're going to execute this step over here for edit fields. You'll see we have this text over here. Then I did convert to file. All I did over here is this is text input field, right? I just dragged and dropped text over here. I just called this data, right? Kept it super basic. And now you can see we have binary data in over here, right? If we view, it's all this text that we've already had, right? So there's that. Okay, cool. And then what we're doing now is going to this Pinecone vector source. So I already showed you, right? Set up your Pinecone account, set up your API key in over here, super basic. Operation mode, we're going to do is insert in documents. Okay. And then what we're going to do is use a Pinecone index. Now I'm going to actually create a new index for you guys, just in case this is your first time jumping into RAG. And let me show you how we can do this. So what we're going to do is go over here to database, and then we're going to create an index. Okay. So what I'm going to call this is just RAG text splitters. So RAG text splitters. And what I'm going to do for my model is I'm just going to use text embedding 3 large. I find it to be more accurate than 3 small on the side of things. It is a little bit more expensive, but just stay with it on the side of things. And I'm going to have a full video talking about some of these over here shortly. So I don't know if embeddings is going to be a little bit before the text splitters. I bet you it will be. But yeah, regardless, what we're going to do now is choose our dimension. So since we're using text embedding 3 large, we want to make sure we use 3072 on this. Metric cosine is fine over there. I'm just going to use serverless AWS. I'll use Virginia, so I'm on the East Coast, and then I'm going to create the index, right? This is a free account, by the way, so just giving you guys that. You didn't have to pay to set up Pinecone initially. Now, this might take a second to spin this up, and now you see we have RAG text splitters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this. I'm going to refresh it, and hopefully it's going to be in my Pinecone vector store 3 over here. All right, so let's jump into this, right? So let's go over here, and what we're going to do is just choose that. So what we can see over here is we have RAG text splitters, embedding batch size, keeping this as default at 200. So that's all you got to do on that side of things. Next, what we have is our embeddings. So on the embedding side of things, right, make sure you set up your OpenAI account. Because I'm using OpenAI embeddings. They have other options for embeddings, but if you want to follow along the video, that's what I'm using. I feel like most people have an OpenAI account if you're watching these videos. Again, just set up an OpenAI API key over here. A full video covering that. So super, super basic. Model, make sure you're using text embedding 3 large, right? There's 3 models over here, ADA 002, which is outdated, small, which is less accurate, and then you have large. So we're just going to use large on that side of things, right? So that's all set. And then finally, what we're going to do is use this default data loader. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in binary data, mode, load specific data, right? Data format is text, right? The file name of the binary data is just called data. Again, you can look over here, and you know why it's not showing is because I refreshed. Let me just show you this, right? Again, data is our name, right? It's a text file. So going over here, right? Make sure this matches. So you can see data to data. Data format is text. You can see file.txt. So we're good. Again, you have different options. You can automatically detect this. You have CSV, docx, EPUB, JSON, PDF. We'll cover some of this in future videos, right? Especially when I build a RAG pipeline that takes in multiple data types. Data over here and text splitting, right? We're just going to keep this as simple. You can see they have custom and it says connected custom. We'll cover that in a second, but we're just going to do simple, right? other properties over here for metadata, which metadata is outside the scope of this video. I'm going to have a full metadata video to cover that. But yeah, so we have simple over here. And then what we're going to do is just run this over here. So we'll run this and you can see it goes over here. It goes into our embeddings, it goes into our default loader. And then we have this on the side of things. So you can see that this text over here, right? All this over here turned into 3 different chunks, right? You can see that 3 items were out of this Pinecone vector store. And we can actually take a look at this. So let's say we want to take a look at our JSON, right? So Christy Mathewson, idol of New York fans, and one of the greatest pitchers the game has ever known, right? Has all this over here. And at the very end, it says, in 1900, Mathewson joined the Giants. Christy Mathewson is one of baseball's most beloved memories. Disputes will never cease regarding, and then that's it, right? So then what we want to do is take a look at our next chunk. So this is chunk 1, right? And then chunk 2, we have this over here. A professional in 1899 as a member of the Honesdale, PA team in 1900. And you can see like this is in the chunk prior, right? And it continues all the way up over to this regarding, right? So you can see all this was in the previous chunk. And now we're getting into our next chunk. We have all this, right? In 1903, Mathewson strikes. And then you can see that's going to also be populated in over here, right? So it's really, really awesome on that side of things, right? We're getting that repeat going across the board. And let me show you also really quick where this is at in our vector. So what we have over here on index, you can see what we have on this side of things is text, right? Text and then text. So 1, 2, 3, this is showing the top 10 over here. And yeah, it's getting populated in our database, which is amazing, right? And now I wouldn't recommend just using the default data loader. Like I think there's better options for you guys. So let's jump into our next option. So what I'm going to do is go over here. We're going to just disconnect that. We're going to go over here and I'm going to show you that next example, right? Let's just grab that and go over here. And we're also going to just delete these. So just go over here. I say delete record, and then delete record. Okay, so all these should be deleted now. Just going to refresh that to make sure. I should have nothing in here. Cool, no records yet. So let's add in our next records. All right, so now what we're going to do is take a look at the character splitter. So this selects the separator used to split the documents into items. So you have the chunk size, chunk overlap, and then you can split by a character. So again, all these are going to be the same, right? Execute workflow, edit, convert to file. And then we go over here to our Pinecone store, right? Again, I'm just going to change this over to RAG text splitters because I built that for this video. Again, we have the 3 large and then over here. So this is where it changes, right? In the one before we did their simple, which is splits every 1000 characters with a 200 character overlap. Now we have custom. It says connect a custom text splitting subnode. So we just choose custom. This is changed. You can see this is a circle here. Now we have a large oval, which stands out quite a bit. And then what you have over here is text splitter, right? So just click over here to text splitter and you get the 3 options. We're covering all of these over here. We're going to start off with our character text splitter. Also, I do apologize for not showing where this Pinecone vector store was. All you have to do is just go over here to Pinecone like this. Whoops, I misspelled it. And it shows your Pinecone vector store, right? And we're going to click add documents to a vector store. So completely apologize, right? Embeddings, we're using OpenAI embeddings, right? And then go into the document over here and we're just using our default document loader. So apologies for skipping over that if you're confused on where this is at. Again, I probably am going to make a beginner RAG video and then jump into all these nuances, but just in case it's your first time watching, there's that. Okay, so let me remove that and we're going to go into over here. So character text splitter, right? You can choose this separator, how you want to separate it. You can choose a chunk size and then also a chunk overlap. So let's say, for example, on this one, which I recommend having some sort of chunk overlap, I think it's better, but we're going to just say 0 on this side of things for chunk overlap. We're going to use a chunk size of 1000, and then we're going to separate this by a period, right? So we'll run this and we'll take a look at our results. So let's just go through this workflow. It should be fine across the board. May just choose specific data. I actually changed this up a little bit before the video. So again, we'll choose text, data, and we should be good. All right, Ready? 3, 2, 1. Go through over here. Looks like it. I don't know why it's not showing. Just gonna save and refresh. It actually did go through. I guess it just bugged out a little bit. And you can see we have our 3 items this time. We go over here, right? And Christy Mathewson is baseball one of most beloved memories. And then this has a period, right? Next, disputes will never regard, right? 267 victims, talking about how he strikes out different players. And then we have our last chunk over here, right? And you can see each of these are new sentences, right? So end of the sentence starts the next chunk, right? End of the sentence starts the next chunk. So this isn't going to be exactly 1,000 characters, right? Because we're splitting on that period, but it's going to get as close as possible, right? On that side of things. And again, if we go into our vector database, you can see what we have is these 3 chunks, right? And you can just take a look at this, right? So you see the text populates over here, edged out 30 victories. And we have that again, if we go over here, right? You can see we have on that side of things. And just to show you other things as well, right? These are the embeddings associated with it. I'm going to have a full embeddings video covering embeddings, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then just going over here, right? Our character text splitter, you can see how this has been split up. Default data loader, right? We have all this over here, and then we just jump into our vector store, gives us a little bit more information. So pretty awesome on that side of things if you want to use the character text splitter. All right, so next thing what we're going to do, and I'm just going to go over here, we'll drag this over here once again. We're going to look at the token splitter just in case you want to split by tokens. So we'll just drag that up over here. And how I recommend visualizing tokens, because tokens aren't one-to-one with characters, right? Some people make that assumption. It's actually a little bit different. You can take a look at how tokens are used. And also to mention, every model defines tokens a little bit differently. So just as a little bit of a heads up on that side of things. But you can just go over here, OpenAI tokenizer, right? And what we can do is it'll show you tokens and characters, right? So I just want to grab this text over here, right? And show you, right? This is well over 2,000 characters. But let's see how many tokens this is. So I go over here, I'll paste it, and you can see it's 550 tokens, but 2247 characters, right? And you can see how it's getting split up and different things like that. And it says a helpful rule of thumb is that 1 token generally corresponds to 4 characters of text for common English text, right? This translates 3/4 of a word. So 100 tokens equals 75 words, right? So again, just to show you the basics behind tokens, right? I just use this tokenizer over here. It is interesting they don't have GPT-5 on here on this side of things. I would have thought they would have had it on the tokenizer, but I guess not a lot of people are using it. Regardless, right? Let's go in here and change this up. So this time with the default loader, right? I grabbed the token text splitter. Again, you can just go over here and grab that. We can choose chunk size. Now, because this over here is 550 tokens, I'm going to change this up and choose a 500 chunk size. So we're going to do 500 tokens on that side of things. Again, just 0 overlap. And what I can do as well is go over here and delete these. So I'm just going to delete these for this purpose. So that way we should only have 2 that get populated this time. So let's delete those. We'll go back over here and we'll just double check that this is correct. Again, I changed that up. So it's going to take 2 seconds for me to fix that. Okay, so we're doing our custom. Again, we're doing the token this time. So remember, token's a little bit different than characters on that side of things, right? And yeah, let's run it. So 3, 2, 1, we'll run that. Again, I don't know why it's bugging out for me today a little bit, but we'll let this run here for a second and I will be back when it's ready. You guys can see that there's 2 items over here. And if I go back over into our vector database, right, we have the 2 items on this side of things, right? The much larger chunk just because of the 500 tokens. And then we have this smaller one over here, the overlap, which you did on purpose, right? Again, I showed you 550 tokens, so that's why I wanted to have that. All right, now the approach that I would personally recommend the most, and this is going to be a recursive text splitter. So the recursive text splitter node splits document data recursively to keep paragraphs together, sentences, and then words together as long as possible. So I would personally recommend using that approach, right? I think it's much better. And typically when you see RAG builds, that is what people are going to be using in n8n. So again, go over here. I'm just going to change this up, right? Because we have this RAG text splitters going over here as well. We're just going to grab this text on the side of things, right? And then you go over to recursive text splitter. So you can choose your chunk size and then you can choose your chunk overlap. So let's change this up, right? I'll say 400 and then I'll say like 100 on this chunk overlap on this side of things, right? And we'll run this through. Also to mention, by the way, it's very common on this chunk sizes to choose anywhere from like 500 to 1,000. And you can see over here, the simple uses 1,000 characters by default, right? But often in RAG builds, you'll see that. And this is things that people test as well to see, what gets better results and things like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through over here. We're going to take a look at how this works. Now, full transparency, right? This is a large just blob, right? Like this isn't a document that's split up into different formatting. And obviously if you worked with documents before, right, there's sections, there's paragraphs, right, dashes, like there's a lot of formatting. This has no formatting, right? So it's pretty bad on that side of things. But typically if you have a document, it's formatted in some sort of capacity, right? This recursive character text splitter is going to do wonders on your data. So let's just go through this one. Again, we're going to add it into there. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is just delete these. We'll rerun this again. And we'll be good to go. All right. So we actually got 8 items on this side of things, right? So going over here, what we can take a look at is each of these items, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right? And then jumping into this over here, we will refresh that here in Pinecone. And what we'll also do, I'll put this in here to the tokenizer as well, right? So you can see we have our first one on that side of things. So let's just go over here into n8n. We'll grab this and I'll show you these different links, right? So delete that. So you can see this is based off of characters, right? 399 characters, and we have 93 tokens associated with it, right? So pretty close to that 400. And again, we don't have really formatting, so it's probably going to optimize for that in most cases, right? You can see over here 392 characters. So it's not exact science, 400 in general, right? It's keeping our just in general, our words, right? So can see on that side of things, it's not splitting in the middle of the words, which is nice. We'll go over here. You can see this is 400 on that side of things, right? Again, keeping our words together. Another one on here. And we'll go through that one as well. 398, right? And you get the point. Like it's not always going to be 400 on this side of things. This is trying to keep things together. We will keep these words together over there. And it's going to be a little bit different if you have a formatted document. And I should just make this note that this is, I guess it's already in the name, right? Recursive character text splitter. So you don't have to worry about it on the tokens, right? So it says right there. So guys, that is this approach. Also, I believe I put a overlap on this one, right? Yeah, so you can see I use an overlap of 100 and just going over here. Where is this overlap at? You can see ending in 1910, right? That's overlapping over here on that side of things. So we get a little bit of the chunk above into this next chunk, right? So again, I really recommend that you have some sort of chunk overlap associated with your chunking process. But those are the 4 text splitters that are available in n8n, right? We went with the basic approach of simple, which starts with 100 or starts with 1,000 characters. Then you have a 200 character overlap. Then we looked at the character splitter, right? So you have the chunk size and chunk overlap as well. And you can split by something like a period or a slash or a column, right? So you have that option over there. And then we covered tokens. And again, you can look at tokenizer on this side of things. Remember, quite different, right? You can see 400 characters is 94 tokens. And again, 3/4 of a word. So 100 tokens is 75 words. Just remember that, at least on OpenAI. And lastly, we used recursive text splitter, which node splits data recursively, try to keep paragraphs and sentences and words together as long as possible. Those are your approaches, right? And then typically chunk size, you go anywhere from like 500 to 1,000 characters in most cases. Hopefully this cleared up RAG text splitters. Like I said, I'm trying to build out each component of RAG into a separate video. That way, like you guys can learn this over a week or 2 weeks, right? This is the text splitter video. We're also going to be covering embeddings the next video, probably before it in the series. I don't know. But I have a full playlist of n8n videos as well. So if you want to continue to learn n8n, RAG, different things like that, check that out on the screen right now. Thanks guys for watching, and I will catch you in another video.